So imagine a perfectly sealed clean room.
Hmm.
The temperature is strictly regulated to a constant, 72 degrees.
Mm.
And the air is meticulously filtered. It's cleared of all contaminants, and there is zero unexpected friction.
Right.
Like nothing inside that room will ever degrade or rust or catch a virus.
Mhm.
It is completely undeniably safe.
Safe, yeah.
But here is the fundamental problem with a perfectly sterile environment.
Right.
Absolutely nothing can grow in it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So today we are undertaking a deep dive into the psychological and uh, systemic mechanics of feeling prematurely settled. We're examining a highly specific behavioral loop.
Hmm.
Basically what happens when young, highly capable individuals engineer their lives to be so devoid of risk, waste, and trouble that they effectively enter a state of early psychological retirement.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to dissect the cognitive frameworks that cause us to conflate safety with correctness and really provide a technical breakdown of how strictly regulated self-restraint can inadvertently erode personal identity. And we're looking at this strictly through the lens of behavioral mechanics and psychological feedback loops. No fluff.
Yeah, and when you analyze the daily objective function of someone trapped in this state, the primary directive basically becomes the absolute minimization of trouble.
Right.
Like every single decision is filtered through this intense risk assessment matrix.
Mhm.
They avoid unnecessary spending. They absolutely refuse to take on complex new human relationships, and they ruthlessly suppress their own desires.
Right.
And I mean, on paper, this looks like ultimate peace.
I think it's like maturity.
Exactly. It looks like financial prudence and emotional maturity, but the internal emotional output just doesn't match the input.
Yeah.
So instead of feeling virtuous or enlightened, this hyper-regulated state generates a lingering, chronic feeling of defeat.
Which, I mean, that seems entirely counterintuitive until you look at the underlying neurology.
Right.
Because on the surface, making safe choices, saving money, staying out of drama, it sounds like optimal adult behavior.
Yeah, of course it does.
But there is a point where that optimization becomes pathological. It's a really subtle shift in the brain's internal logic.
It is. It's a gradual merging of definitions, really.
Okay, how so?
So when a person continuously, literally without exception, prioritizes safety over all other variables, the brain begins to fuse the concept of safe with the concept of correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they stop being two distinct categories. And once that neurological bridge is built, any unpredictable variable is immediately classified by the nervous system as a threat.
Even good things.
Even positive variables, so an
Yeah.
unexpected invitation to a party, or a sudden urge to buy something trivial, or even just a change in schedule.
Right.
These are no longer seen as opportunities, they are seen as structural threats that might break the perfectly established, highly controlled lifestyle.
You see this play out in incredibly mundane but
Yeah.
just striking patterns of aborted actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the mental math of talking yourself out of living.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
a person genuinely wants to go see a movie, they feel the impulse, but then the risk assessment algorithm kicks in.
Right, the math starts.
Right, they
Yeah.
calculate the price of the ticket, the transit time, the possibility that the movie might just be disappointing,
Yeah.
and they ultimately stay home to avoid that minor friction.
Or they actually need new clothes, but they delay the purchase for years.
Just because the old clothes technically still shield them from the elements.
Exactly. They cancel potential trips because they pre-calculate the physical fatigue. They are essentially optimizing for zero energy expenditure.
It's optimizing for zero. That's, it makes me think of the human equivalent of overfitting a machine learning model.
Oh, yeah. That's a great analogy.
Because if you train an AI on a very specific, highly limited data set, it will perform with absolute perfection on that exact data.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you introduce a single piece of new real-world data, the model completely breaks down.
It's shattered.
Right, because it has been over-optimized for a static environment. So the individual in this scenario has perfectly optimized their behavior for a life of no spending, no risk, and no fatigue.
Right.
But in doing so, they've lost the ability to process new data.
Exactly.
They aren't actually making chases anymore. They are just mathematically eliminating risk.
And that elimination of risk leads to a really critical secondary failure in the system.
Which is why.
Well, the overfitted human has successfully eliminated all friction, sure, but they've simultaneously eliminated all the sensory input required to navigate a dynamic world.
I see.
Which brings us to the internal signals that used to drive those choices in the first place, our desires.
Right, because if you have engineered a life where you never ever act on a want, the act of wanting itself starts to feel like a structural flaw.
Yes.
And this is where self-regulation mutates into something toxic, I think. We are taught that extreme frugality and unending patience are virtues.
Which they can be.
They can be, yeah. But when that regulation goes too far, simply experiencing a fleeting desire begins to feel like a failure of discipline.
Exactly. And suppressing desire doesn't just save money or conserve energy, it actively shrinks the outline of the self.
Shrinks the outline of the self. That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, because we tend to view desires as mere impulses, right?
I
Like
see.
distractions that need to be managed or curbed or budgeted away.
Right.
But from a behavioral mechanic standpoint, desires are critical diagnostic tools.
Okay.
They are the telemetry data of our underlying values. So when you constantly mute those signals, you aren't just saving $20, you are basically blinding yourself to your own internal state.
So looking at those desires as diagnostic data points is a really fascinating framework. Because if you feel a sudden desire for, let's say, an expensive meal, the immediate reaction of the hyper-optimized brain is to label that as gluttony or financial irresponsibility.
Right, a failure.
Exactly. But as a telemetry signal, it means something entirely different.
Yeah.
It's a signal that your underlying self values the act of eating,
Yeah.
the communal experience of a meal, the aesthetic presentation of food.
Yeah, or if you find yourself drawn to looking at new shoes, it's not necessarily a failure of materialism.
Right.
It is often a dormant internal urge for mobility. It's a signal that your body and mind are craving movement and new environments,
Oh, wow.
or becoming obsessed with a video game or a movie. It isn't just escapism, it's the brain actively starving for joy outside the strict, rigid parameters of pure efficiency.
So when you view every desire as a threat to your perfectly stable life, you are essentially cutting the wires to your own dashboard indicators.
Yes. Think of it like a pilot.
Yeah.
If a pilot cuts the wires to the altitude warning system just because the beeping is annoying,
Right.
they achieve a quiet cabin, but they completely lose the ability to fly the plane.
Yeah.
When you systematically ignore your own telemetry, you reach a point where you genuinely no longer know what you value or who you are.
But I have to push back on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if we treat every single fleeting desire as a profound personal signal, isn't that just a highly intellectualized rationalization for unchecked consumerism?
Right.
Like if I want to buy an absurdly expensive pair of boots and I tell myself, well, this is just my soul yearning for mobility and grounding,
Right.
I'm still just draining my bank account for a lot of boots.
Yes, but the distinction lies in the difference between observation and execution.
Okay.
The goal of recognizing these desires isn't to unconditionally fulfill every single one of them.
I see.
The clinical protocol is simply to listen to them. You don't actually have to buy the boots, but you absolutely must register the data point that your mind is currently craving, movement or novelty, or perhaps a change in how you present yourself to the world.
Right.
You might resolve that craving by taking a long walk in your old shoes or exploring a new neighborhood.
So the danger is in the suppression of the signal entirely.
Exactly. The internal monologue that says, I shouldn't want shoes. Wanting things is a weakness.
Wow.
If you do that repeatedly, you stop trusting your own emotional telemetry.
It's basically treating a desire the way we treat physical pain. Like if you put your hand on a hot stove, the pain is a diagnostic signal telling you to move your hand.
Right.
If you just take a painkiller to suppress the signal, you're going to burn your hand off.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So acknowledging the data without being compelled to execute the purchase forces, a complete reevaluation of how we measure efficiency.
It does.
Because in a perfectly optimized life, spending money on something you don't strictly need or spending time on something that doesn't yield a tangible result is highly inefficient.
Yeah.
But if unfulfilled desires hold vital diagnostic value, we have to ask, what is the actual return on investment of deliberate inefficiency?
Well, leaving a budget for things that appear completely useless is actually strategically vital.
Strategically vital to be useless.
Yeah, because waste has a distinct, unquantifiable value that highly regulated systems fail to measure. If you look at human memory generation, efficiency is actually the enemy of retention.
Right. Because efficient days are identical.
Yes.
If you wake up, work, eat a nutritionally optimized meal, and go to sleep, you have expended the minimum amount of energy required to survive. But you remember absolutely nothing about that Tuesday.
Nothing at all.
And the examples that really highlight this are things like clothes you only end up wearing once, purposeless little trinkets you buy on a whim, movies that leave absolutely no lasting impression on you,
Right.
or short-lived events like a fireworks display.
Yeah.
Strictly through the lens of asset management, they yield a terrible return. They're depreciating assets or instantly vaporize capital.
Exactly.
But from a memory generation perspective, those inefficient moments are the vital raw materials that give human life its texture.
Because waste creates markers in time. It provides the friction necessary for the brain to actually record an event. And this defense of inefficiency directly parallels another complex behavioral mechanic, which is the utility of conformity.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Right. Because we live in an era that highly prizes individualism, often framing conformity as a failure of character or a surrender of autonomy.
Which is just another trap of over-optimization.
Exactly.
Because avoiding popular things just to prove you are different requires a massive expenditure of unnecessary cognitive energy.
It's exhausting.
It really is. It made me think of conformity as a kind of social API.
A social API, I like that.
Yeah, because in software, an API is a standardized interface that allows two completely different programs to communicate smoothly without having to know the complex inner workings of each other.
Right.
But you can also think of it in physical terms, like drafting in a bicycle race.
Oh, sure.
Like the lead cyclist is taking all the wind resistance.
Yeah.
If you ride directly behind them in the slipstream, you expend significantly less energy. So doing what everyone else does, going to the well-known chain shops, watching the viral media everyone is talking about, taking standard vacations at the standard times.
Yeah.
It functions exactly like that slipstream.
It reduces social friction.
Yeah.
And it creates instant, low-stakes common ground.
Right.
I mean, if you watch the same viral show as your coworkers, you have an immediate protocol to interface with them.
Log in.
Exactly. It actively mitigates feelings of isolation. Refusing to use that tool simply to maintain an illusion of utter uniqueness is just exhausting.
Yeah.
It leaves you constantly fighting the wind resistance of daily social interaction.
And redefining autonomy that way changes the entire landscape. We usually think of freedom as constantly walking a different path, like hacking your way through the jungle with a machete.
Right.
But true freedom is having the pragmatic ability to walk the exact same paved path as everyone else to save energy, and then smoothly diverging back to your own highly personalized path only when it is actually necessary for your core values.
Yeah, exactly. And if we accept that both minor waste and strategic conformity have measurable systemic value in preventing a person from becoming totally isolated and rigid,
Right.
the next logical step is diagnostics.
Okay, diagnostics.
How does an individual objectively measure if their quiet, highly regulated life is actually a state of healthy resting, or if it has mutated into pathological avoidance?
Because from the outside, the behaviors look completely identical.
Exactly.
And this is where the post-action emotional audit becomes necessary. You can't just look at the behavior itself.
Right.
Staying home on a Saturday night and reading a book looks exactly the same regardless of your internal motivation. So you have to analyze the emotional residue left in the body and the mind
Yeah.
after the action has been completed.
Yes, and the distinction is incredibly sharp when you look at that residue.
All right.
If you choose to stay home all day, and at the end of the day your internal readout is a genuine feeling of, today was wonderfully calm, well, that indicates a state of systemic recovery.
Meaning things are working.
The system is functioning normally, you expended energy during the week, and you have successfully replenished it.
Right.
But if you stay home all day and the resulting emotional residue is a sinking, hollow feeling of, I failed to do anything again,
Oh, yeah.
that indicates systemic avoidance.
That second feeling is so visceral. It's usually driven by background thoughts playing on a loop like, I'll fail anyway if I try to go out.
Right.
Or, networking events are above my station.
Right.
Or it's too late for me to start that hobby.
Exactly.
It is resignation, heavily disguised as peace.
Yes.
The physical action is identical, just sitting on the couch, but the internal mechanics are completely opposed. One is restoring energy, the other is actively suppressing fear.
Which brings up the specific phenomenon of spacing out.
Oh, this is a big one.
It is, because in a highly optimized, productivity-obsessed culture, sitting and staring at a wall for an hour is almost universally coded as a massive failure of productivity.
Right, or a tragic loss of youthful drive.
Exactly. People feel immense guilt when they catch themselves just staring out a window doing absolutely nothing.
But the behavioral framework fundamentally reclassifies that state.
It does.
Because it isn't a void of activity or a failure of willpower. Spacing out is an active processing state.
Yes.
It is the brain's mechanism for draining accumulated cognitive fatigue
Yeah.
and really organizing a massive backlog of environmental stimuli.
Right.
It's the neurological equivalent of digestion. Like, you wouldn't call a snake lazy for resting while it digests a meal.
No, you wouldn't.
The human brain consumes a massive amount of caloric energy. It absolutely requires downtime to defragment the hard drive.
And it only triggers a negative diagnostic if remaining in that dormant state actively amplifies self-blame.
Okay.
So if you space out for an hour and feel physically refreshed and mentally clearer, the system worked.
Right.
But if you space out and spend the entire 60 minutes punishing yourself mentally for not being productive, that indicates a critical need to adjust the baseline rhythm of your life.
Because the core philosophy here is that self-restraint, discipline, and even downtime are tools designed to protect you.
Yes.
They are not a penal code designed to punish you the moment you step out of a perfectly optimized line.
Exact.
That distinction, a tool for protection versus a penal code, is profound.
It really shifts the perspective.
So let's play this out practically.
Yeah.
A listener runs this post-action emotional audit.
Okay.
They look at their weekends, they look at their choices, and they realize they aren't in a recovery loop at all.
Right.
They are deeply trapped in an avoidance loop.
Yeah.
The fear of friction has completely paralyzed them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my immediate assumption, and I think the cultural assumption, is that you need a massive intervention.
Right. Blow it all up.
You need to blow up your life, quit the job, move to a new city, go on a silent retreat, start entirely over.
Which is essentially treating a paper cut with an amputation.
Yeah.
The impulse to blow up the system is very common, but it introduces catastrophic system shock. Well, think of a scuba diver. If a scuba diver is deep underwater and panics, swimming straight to the surface as fast as possible will kill them.
Right, the bends.
The change in pressure is too extreme. When someone whose nervous system is accustomed to zero risk suddenly introduces massive risk by quitting their job, the resulting anxiety will likely force them to retreat even deeper into their shell.
Oh, that makes sense.
So instead, the clinical protocol is the deliberate, ongoing practice of micro-foolishness.
I love this concept. Micro-foolishness.
Yeah.
It's like a form of controlled exposure therapy.
Precisely. By executing low-stakes, slightly irrational actions, the individual slowly rebuilds their neurological capacity to process failure and friction without triggering a systemic collapse.
Right?
You are building emotional calluses.
Yeah.
And you don't build calluses by smashing your hand with a hammer.
No.
You build them through continuous minor friction over time.
And the examples of this are just wonderfully accessible. We are talking about allocating just a few hundred to a few thousand yen, money that would normally be strictly earmarked for a savings account, and deploying it purely for fun, with zero expectation of a return.
Yes.
It's buying that small trinket you've debated over for weeks.
Exactly.
It's walking out your front door purely based on your current mood, without checking a map, looking at the weather, or making a strict schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Attending a social gathering with the explicit permission you give yourself to leave after 20 minutes if you hate it.
Right.
Or even just blindly consuming a piece of media someone recommended without looking up the reviews first to guarantee it's actually good.
The underlying mechanic here is that the cost of failure is negligible.
Yeah.
You are artificially introducing a variable into the overfitted model.
And what you learn is that if a micro decision fails, say the movie is completely terrible, or the trinket breaks in a week, or you get slightly lost on your walk, you survive.
You survive.
You can easily, effortlessly return to your baseline of safety.
Yeah.
Safety is still there. You haven't lost your apartment. You haven't ruined your life.
And this proven, lived ability to return to baseline is the only thing that successfully neutralizes the fear of the unknown.
Right.
Because you cannot logic your way out of the fear of failure.
No.
You cannot read enough books to convince your nervous system that failure is okay. You have to physically experience a minor failure, survive it, and register the survival.
Yeah.
Human states are not static. Identity isn't a permanent contract.
So true. If you currently identify as a frugal or calm person, you don't have to uphold that identity unconditionally every second of every day, like a character in a movie.
Exactly.
You are allowed to desire things today that you had absolutely no interest in yesterday.
True systemic stability isn't a flat line on a heart monitor.
To have a flat line is death.
Right. True stability is having a solid, reliable foundation of safety, but deliberately placing small, measured amounts of desire, waste, and risk on top of
Yes.
it. That is what maintains the natural elasticity and fluctuations required for a human life to actually feel lived.
Absolutely. So, to synthesize the core technical takeaways from our deep dive today, we've examined how relentless, unchecked safety seeking can inadvertently cause psychological sensory deprivation, effectively blinding us to our own preferences and narrowing the outline of the self. We've explored how unfulfilled desires should never be ruthlessly suppressed, but rather utilized as critical data points, right? The telemetry of our underlying values.
Yes.
We've redefined inefficiency and conformity not as failures, but as vital tools for memory generation and social connection.
Right.
And finally, we've outlined how the behavioral mechanism of controlled micro-foolishness is required to inject elasticity back into a rigid, over-optimized system.
It really is a powerful framework.
It's a powerful framework for reclaiming agency without sacrificing the security we've worked so hard to build.
It basically allows you to step out of the clean room and actually experience the weather, knowing you can always go back inside if it rains.
It really does.
Yeah.
But it leaves me with a thought I want to throw out there for everyone listening, building on the mechanics we've discussed today.
Okay.
If the friction of unfulfilled desires and the texture created by minor failures and inefficient waste are what actually generate the outline of our individual identities, what happens to a society if an entire generation successfully utilizes technology and hyper-optimization to perfectly automate away all their minor inconveniences and risks?
Oh, wow.
Right? If we build that perfect frictionless clean room on a global scale where every algorithm feeds us exactly what we want and every risk is mitigated before we even perceive it, do we achieve perfect peace or do we simply erase our collective identity?
That is something to think about.
Definitely something to think about.